Hey, it's AC. Welcome to my house. Excited for another episode here on the House of AC. Thank you to our sponsor, Jasmine Mortgage Team. Get your loans from Jasmine. I do. I get my personal loans from Jasmine. Big friend, big successful before. She's been on the show several times. So check out Jasmine Mortgage Team if you're refinancing or looking to buy your first property, real estate investment property, anything like that. I want to say thank you for everyone tuning in live. I appreciate it. You can ask questions. We're going to have a great guest today, Dan at Resilient REI. He interviews real estate investors. So I saw him on Twitter. We don't know each other. I reached out to him and I was like, I like to talk to real estate investors. That's all I do. That's why I have this show. And then this guy's doing it I assume, to talk to other real estate investors because he enjoys it. And so I'm like, we're going to be best friends. I just know it. We're going to have a lot to talk about. So I'm very excited about that. Thanks for tuning in later. If you're watching this later on YouTube, the House of AC, or if you're checking in on the House of AC Facebook page, I appreciate it. If you want to follow along, social media channels, go to Linktree/the House of AC, and you'll see the TikToks, the Instagrams, the Twitters, and all that. But this guy joining us is Dan, and he is at Resilient REI on Twitter. Great feed. Subscribe to his newsletter where he interviews real estate investors every single week. And we're going to talk about his real estate. I'm turning the tables. So I want to interview Dan. Dan's always interviewing other people. I want to interview Dan. What does his portfolio look like? I know he does a lot of out-of-state investing. I know he's got big goals, generational wealth sort of goals for himself. I want to know how he's planning to achieve that and dig a little bit deeper. So let's get started. Hey, Dan, welcome to my house.
Hey, how's it going, Alan? Great to be in the house with you.
I appreciate it. Well, as I mentioned in the intro, that this is our first time meeting, so thank you for being on the show. Appreciate it, and I just enjoy your Twitter feed. And I was like, this guy thinks like I think. He's excited to talk to other real estate investors, and so I just wanted to meet you face to face and introduce myself. So I appreciate you willing to talk to me for the first time on the House of AC here.
What better way of meeting just like-minded strangers than in the public forum? I'm all for it. Love talking about real estate. So looking forward to having a good conversation about real estate, and hopefully people get some value from it.
Yeah. Well, I always like to start about your origin story. How did you get into real estate?
Sure. So I was in college. I guess I was really into the startup scene, and I actually had a podcast called The Founder in college where I ran around kind of like what I'm doing on Twitter, except it was a podcast format, interviewing people who are starting companies. A lot of people very, very early on who hadn't raised a whole lot of money. But it was a great experience with networking and having, real business conversations with people. And because of the podcast, I was able to get in the door and interview for companies that I really had no business to interview for, after college, right? And I got on this one company that was a healthcare company, and it was one of the biggest startups in Chicago startup history. The number one company that ever raised, like the most amount of money ever raised in the Chicago startup history, was Groupon. Kind of little known fact. They raised about $1 billion their first round. I want to say it was their first round. And then the company that I was going to be going for just raised the second most, ever at 550 million.
Oh, wow.
So I did all the interviews. It was nerve wracking. They're like, we don't typically interview people right out of college for sales positions. So it's healthcare, right? So you're talking with doctors, you're talking with really intelligent business people, and I know nothing about medical. So,
Right.
But I ended up getting the job. I was super stoked about it. You went in the first day. Everybody's orientation. People are saying about where they came from. LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, like all like the big tech names, right? And I was the only person who came from college. So me as this 23-year-old, I was like, I've made it. I've hooked my wagon up to, the locomotion to Easy Street. They're already talking about, preferred stock options within the company. And then just went in the role and just started killing it. But after, I want to say about 6 months in, we got pulled in, the whole sales team got pulled into a conference room, and we're told, hey, the Wall Street Journal is going to be doing some fake news about us. and don't talk to any reporters, right? You don't talk to any reporters. And this older, and I say old, he was probably like 33,
Yeah.
sales guy was what does a reporter look like? Does he have like the hat with like little thing in it, right? Like,
Press.
is he going
Yeah.
around with his notepad? And our manager, who is probably about the same age, right, was like, I don't know what to tell you. We just can't talk about anything. And that kind of led to, I want to say, about a 2 month just downward spiral for the company. Um, and we ended up finding out that, and there's still litigation, so I don't really know how much I'm able to kind of speculate, but there's a lot of, cooking of the books, lying to investors. The whole money that was initially raised was, all based on false pretenses, acquisitions that, weren't done ethically. So there was an initial round of layoffs, and then there was a second round of like a voluntary severance package that I elected to take.
So your
And
mindset during this first job out of college is basically, oh, there's no such thing as job security. Is that sort of what your thought process?
well, yeah, but it was so striking because you go in and it's like it was like working for Google or Facebook, right? Like we had free lunches, we
Right.
had free breakfasts, we had like 3 baristas on staff. We were in like one of the premier office buildings in Chicago. So you went from, I got all the job security in the world, right,
Right.
to, oh my God, what is real, what is fake, and it was very jarring. So that really put me down the path of, hey, I can't depend upon other people, right, to do their jobs in order for me to support my family. And I didn't have a family, wasn't married at the time, no kids or anything like that.
Right.
But that's what got me down really a 3-year path studying real estate, reading books, podcasts, YouTube, Twitter, all that, to then be able to start acquiring. So, 3 years of study, fourth year was able to start acquiring properties and bought 3 single family. I call there are a couple of townhouses in there, but they're not like condos, right?
Right.
They're they're 2-story with a basement. And I'm going into what I call my 5th year of real estate now, second year of heavy acquisitions.
Wow. So, 3 years of study. A lot of people seem stuck in the study mode. I mean, 3 years is amazing, and you're that's probably why you were able to scale so quickly. But what was the last sort of step to get you saying, "Oh, I know enough. I'm comfortable enough. I'm ready to do this."
It's funny enough, I was speaking with a good friend of the family and who invests in the market that I was looking to get into, which is Milwaukee, by the way.
Yeah.
And we were talking, and he owns maybe 10 properties at the time, much older than me, my dad's age. And we were talking through it, and he basically said, "You know more about real estate than I did when I start, and you might actually know more about real estate than I do now." Right?
Right.
There's
Right.
there's you should not be talking about invest in buying that first property in the second quarter. You need to be looking at it right now. You need to be pulling the trigger. And hearing that from somebody who was a lot older than me, was really, it was kind of like the kick in the pants that I needed.
So now that you've bought real estate in your experience, what do you think? Do you think you wanted that 3 years was worthwhile, or do you think you should have started earlier?
Well, I think that it was I was jumping to go, right. Like there were a couple of false starts, if you will, where I was trying to do a little bit more of the creative financing route.
Yeah.
Really tried house hacking for a while, and they didn't work for a number of different reasons, and I'm really happy that they didn't, because I would have gone all in, no emergency fund. I wouldn't have had like, there's like a set of prerequisites that you kind of need to learn before you start acquiring, in my opinion, right? Like you need to be able to have your money right, you need to be able to budget effectively, you
Yeah.
need to really know what you're buying, and need to have a team around you. And I just did not have all of those prerequisites, to be able to move sooner. So
Right.
I was in a good position, but I just wasn't ready, and I didn't know at the time, and I was not happy about it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
looking back on it, it was time well spent.
Oh, that's great. So, you are investing in the Milwaukee area. What part of the country do you live in?
So I live in Chicago, so it's about an hour and a half south of Milwaukee.
Okay. Right. So this long distance, more or less? I mean, you're managing any of these properties?
No, I've got a property manager who oversees all these properties. And it is, I mean, it's out of state, even though it's pretty close.
Yeah.
But I don't go and walk properties myself. I don't go and tour the job sites. Not that I've been doing a whole lot of like gut rehabs or anything, but it's very much remote for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, no, I love that. I used to have a large single family portfolio that was like an hour and 20 minutes from me. I've sold all those properties now, but I never I think I've only been in about 12 of those properties at any one time. And I had no idea who the tenants were. I had no idea the condition of the property. It was just you've got a local realtor, property manager, home inspector, all that stuff. They'll take care of everything for you. You surround yourself with a team, like you said. And I know that sounds very scary to a lot of our listeners. And so how did you overcome that? How do you say, hey, I'm getting new to this, and I don't need to be hands-on. I don't need to worry at night about every issue kind of thing. How do you get over that mindset?
I was listening to a podcast, a bigger pockets, full disclosure, before I got started, and I was kind of wrestling with that as well. And they brought on a remote real estate investor, and he was like some hard, some over caffeinated dude, the typical, had the big venti thing of Starbucks on the interview, and they asked him the same question, how do you get over that? And he said, buckle up, buttercup, right? This is the path you want. How badly do you want this?
Right.
And I took that to heart, right? Like, hey, you got to be brave sometimes. And that first property was nerve wracking, but I think that that initial property and getting over the hiccups, that fear, I should say, was really important, because it then set me up for success. And it really comes down to building out systems and making sure that you have a team that you have faith in. If you trust your team, you should be able to execute it. You shouldn't be too fearful after the first acquisition.
Yeah, I think for me, when I got started, it wasn't that I knew everything about real estate, but I knew I wanted the benefits of real estate. That was my strong, driving force. I was like, I need to leave my day job. It's driving me insane. I need to invest in real estate. I'll figure it out. I just got to get started, And so I had a slightly different approach. It was just maybe naivety or naive. Oh man.
There's plenty of night. I can't even pronounce it either.
Yeah.
That was,
I do this every episode.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
always a word that when I'm live streaming, I'll get stuck on a word. Whatever. Maybe my innocence and ignorance, should have been in check. But I dove in and I figured it out. But if taking those 3 hours or 3 years, I would imagine that now your cycle of investing has got to be really sort of quick to analyze the deal, your comfort level. So when you said the systems, what are those systems in place that you mentioned?
Well, I say systems, and I think that really it's the team on the ground is so important, right? So I've got just a rock star of a property manager on the ground in Milwaukee. She's actually the same person that I was referring to earlier, the family friend who really kicked me in the pants.
Oh, good.
He has worked with her for forever, and so she's just been great. And kind of what I've learned is that when you're investing out of state, it's so important to have a rock star property manager. And Rockstar, and I'm curious if you've got what your opinion on this is, but my property manager, she's also an agent. She's got all the connections within the market, with whether it's accountants, whether it's lenders. So when she walks a property for me, right, like I guess our system, if you will, is she can put on her hat and say, okay, this is my property manager hat. This is why I do or don't want to operate in this part of the market, right? This part of the neighborhood. Why this block is easier or harder to rent to compared to the other block. Let me put my acquisition hat on. How are we going to be able to put an offer together? This is my opinion on how we can get this deal locked in. And then here's my lender hat on. Here's who we need to talk to get this property acquired. So having a person like that, just a rock star property manager who can run through those separate roles at when they're walking a property, has been super, super helpful. So I guess that would be kind of like the acquisition system, if you will.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it helps us move super quick, so we can know exactly hey, this is a property, this is a winner, let's act on it.
Yeah, I like to use that term. I actually use that exact same term in my book, House Fire, and lay it out just
Right.
like that. And the way I sort of look at it is, hey, you don't need to find a 3-in-1. Like you got the jackpot. But if you find a 1-in-1, like if you find that rock star realtor or that rock star property manager or that rock star lender, they surround themselves with other rock stars. So just find one, and it could be a recommendation. Like if you're looking for an agent, I say work with an agent that owns real estate, right? If you talk to a property manager, they're going to introduce you to realtors, they're going to introduce you to other investors to sort of give recommendations. Like they're successful because they've surrounded themselves with successful people. So you're lucky you got the 3-in-1, the hat trick, and that's amazing. And so it's there is a level of trust. I think a lot of people don't naturally trust people that they don't see face to face. They live in another city, they live in another town, and it does take a level of trust for that person to make recommendations. So I think a lot of it goes, if the first one goes really well, then you build trust quickly, and then that agent's going to bring you the next deal and the third deal and be like, Dan, I've got a fourth one here. I know you like this is your price point, this is your bread and butter. I already got the property manage, it's the same property management company, things like that. Is that sort of what you found, is now people are bringing you deals and you don't have to hunt remotely as well?
Well, I mean, the market's been so hot. There are pocket listings, right, that my property manager kind of has on their website, but they're I haven't found one that really stood out to me. I mean, it's mainly I've been buying off of the MLS, in all honesty.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I like to say there's gold in the MLS. You just have to pay attention, and you have to look multiple times a day.
Yeah, I agree. Sort of my advice now in this super hot market is, hey, assume everything that you see, the price is probably going to be at least 20 to 50% more, higher with a bidding war. If you want the deals, right now, only look at properties that are on the market for over 30 days, because
Hmm.
if they're over 30 days, they are way overpriced. Everyone's sleeping on them, and they are having those internal debates. Do we drop the price or do we take it off the market? And then you can throw in your lowball offer right now, and it's a numbers game. Probably 1 in 10 might be accepted, but you will never know if you don't try. So
That's
that's
funny. That's actually how I bought my last deal. I saw it on the MLS. I'm like, at this price point, it doesn't make sense, but it just doesn't.
yeah,
And I called up my the property manager, right? And I said, hey, what do you think of this? And she was like, it's overpriced. I don't know what to tell you. I was like, well, could you just take a look at it? And she looked at it. It was vacant, and the investors wanted to sell. So we put in a super aggressive offer, and they're like, pound sand, right? Like,
right.
our we'll counter and we'll take like 5% off of the asking price, and then we're like, you know what, we'll just let this sit. Let's see if they want it to sit for another 60 days, and then they came back at the end of the weekend and said, yeah, we'll take your offer.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I love that. Yeah,
yeah.
and that's the gold you're talking about. Um, and I get this a lot too from people sort of sitting on the sidelines, and they're saying, "Hey, I want to wait till the market cools, or the market's too hot. I don't want to overpay for a property." And that's a viewpoint of a primary home buyer. But if a real estate investor, there's no like crazy bidding wars that happen, because we all run numbers very similarly. And at one point, this property doesn't make sense to purchase. It's just not going to cash flow, right? And so you don't get that fervor in like the duplexes, triplex as much, because who's going to buy a property that's losing the money each month? You might get that house hacker who's willing to pay extra because they live in one of the units and the other units cover the rent. But if the numbers make sense, it's cash flowing. I don't care if it's an up market or a down market. Jump on the property if you can, and just acquire as many as possible. That's my personal goal. But what's your goals in real estate?
So, and if I could, I want to just you said something about people waiting for the market to
Yeah,
cool.
sure.
It's like, if you're an investor, right, you go out and you buy stuff that makes sense. All these people, I don't run into people all the time are like, oh yeah, I'll buy when the market crashes. And it's like, well, if the market crashes by 50%, you're going to be losing your mind worrying if you can, like, if you're going to have a job and your savings. the last thing that you're going to be looking to do is to buy real estate. So,
Yeah.
if a deal makes sense, you buy it. You don't wait until the market crashes.
I promise
I want
you.
to. I have so many of these conversations, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
address that real
No,
quick.
I want to dig in. I mean, those same people, how many people want to start recording people who say that to me, because then when the market crashes, they're going to be
Yeah,
like, now's not a good time to buy real estate. Are you crazy? The market's crashing. Why would I buy real estate? Like,
it's on a discount. What are you doing?
yeah,
Go.
yeah. So yeah, you should always be buying. That's my philosophy. So you've got how many properties? Well, first, how old are you?
So I am 27, turning 28 in October. I've got 3 properties now. I've got a fourth one that will be closing on Friday. Super excited. It's my first BRRRR. I'm really, really pumped,
Oh,
right?
awesome.
And then I've got ambitions of buying an additional 3 this year.
Oh,
So want to end the year at about 7.
yeah, right. So this is awesome. You're a young guy buying a property. Sounds like wow. 3 this year. So you bought 3 and now you're like, okay, I get it. Let's
Yeah,
spin that
yeah.
flywheel around. And are these all going to be in Milwaukee, sort of the long distance approach, or?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess we're kind of flip flopping, right? But your previous question about like what are my ambitions in real
Yeah.
estate? I want to be in Milwaukee. It's a affordable, great market to be in. I've got a wonderful team there, so I really want to maximize it. And then at some point, repatriate some of that money here into Chicago and do development, do office space, or something at a grander scheme. I mean, that's maybe 10 years, 15 years down the road. But for the time being, I want to build up a portfolio that in Milwaukee that cash flows, and then kind of see where my options are down. Like once that portfolio is at a big enough scale.
And you have a day job currently, right? So you're able.
Correct.
Okay. So I love this because a lot of people think that they have to quit their job to invest in real estate, and here you are in Chicago, an hour and a half away, working a day job, and this is, I hate to call. Do you call it a hobby, or do you call it what do you call it?
I would call it passion. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe passion, addictive. If I wanted to be super,
Right.
I don't know what the
I
type,
know.
like, super sexy about it, but I mean, it's a part of me. And when I met my wife, I was a year into the whole researching of real estate, and I didn't want to say it, but it was kind of like a package deal. Like, hey, if we're gonna be together, if we're gonna get married, this is something that has to be in my life. And she, the bug bit her as well. So we're a pretty good team.
That's awesome. I think that's that a lot of people hit that obstacle. The spouse who doesn't see it, or the spouse who thinks it's risky or it's going to detract from their finances. I my wife is very supportive, but it took 1 or 2 deals for me to like lay it out on a spreadsheet and say, this is why I'm buying this property. This is the returns. This is my expected returns. And when the first one went well, then she was a little bit, more supportive on the second one. And then when the second one was like a home run, she's like, okay, Alan, you understand what you're doing. But
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
you probably, it was kind of cool. But I got into it after. Well, no, I guess it was before I got married. But yeah, I didn't have the foresight that you had, where I was like, this is a part of my life.
Well,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and I was also, still hot off of the whole company falling apart, right? Like kind of the beginning of my story.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was still very fresh in my mind, right? Like, hey, I can't rely on a company. I can't rely on a pension. I don't even want to rely on a 401k. I don't want to rely on the stock market.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
I understand it. I know it's irrational, but it's like my retirement and our retirement is real estate.
Yeah, no, I love that. So you've now started this new venture at Resilient REI, where you're interviewing other real estate investors, and
Right.
sort of a weekly inbox sort of interview. What's the catalyst of this? What are your goals with this project? And yeah,
Well, it kind of it brings me back to when I was in college and I was doing the podcast where I was interviewing people in the startup world, and you know, just having a platform where I'm not talking about myself. Like, I put out a bunch of stuff on Twitter just because I think it's interesting, but really the purpose of Resilient REI is to give a platform for people who are really into real estate to kind of tell their story, very similar to what you're doing, here.
mhm,
And the cool thing about building a platform for other people to use and to talk about how, about their journey and about what they're doing, is that you get to talk with a lot of really great people. You get to have a lot of great conversations, and it's a great way to network, right? Because you're giving people a way to tell their story, and people really like that. And which means that they're more likely to say, hey, I've got this deal, right? Like, we should go in on this deal. I've got this market, I've got this team that you might, would love to have you in Florida or something like that, right? So
Right.
there's all these doors that kind of open up to you. So that's kind of like what my initial kind of, thought process is to have for having this Twitter. And then the other element is, once I've achieved financial independence through real estate, I want to build this out to a full-fledged media company where I've got like what you're doing here with
Right.
podcasts, with video, to kind of use that as building out a company. So that's kind of like the grander ambition.
Yeah. Well, on Twitter, you said you wanted to be your family's first billionaire.
Well, I mean, that was kind of because so many people talk about, like, I want to be my family's first millionaire.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how much my parents have in their 401k and their retirement. I'd like
Right.
to think that there are people I'm related to that, are able to have $1 million for their retirement, because you kind of need to have $1 million plus to retire.
Right.
So I'm like, well, I want to up the ante. I want to set a new standard.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, that's like the Grant Cardone 10X method. Like, if you come
Right.
up short and you only have 800 million, your family's not going to be upset with you.
No.
Might as well aim for the stars. I want to talk about some other tweets if you're comfortable with that.
Sure, go ahead.
These are just things that I find that I connected with. You tweeted, going to be broke on Friday, closing on a property, paying off credit cards. Real estate investors go broke multiple times a year.
Yeah.
Can you explain that for maybe people who don't get it?
Well, the story behind that, and I alluded to, I'm buying a property on Friday, but it's going to be my first deal all in cash. So, and by the way, I had no idea how easy it is buying real estate without getting a loan or having a mortgage.
Oh, yeah,
Like, that
yeah.
is that is such a cheat code. I hate sending all those documents to, like, lenders and stuff. But
Right.
so my point being is, I don't I don't want money in a bank account. I want physical assets that generate cash flow. Um, I would, Robert Kiyosaki talked about in Cash Flow Quadrant, right, that the purpose of a business is to buy real estate, not to make money. You make money to then go and buy real estate. So that's my mentality, right? Like, I've got, the emergency fund. I've got, just some working capital that I can personally use to pay off credit cards and, make sure that I can live in where I'm living at, right?
Right.
But all the other money, it's going to real estate. It's going to buying cash flow.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've been doing this for 22 years. I feel like I live paycheck to paycheck in many ways.
Yeah.
Where's my paycheck coming in? Because when people hear the phrase "have your money work for you," this is what you're talking about. It's every dollar I'm reinvesting it, putting it back into another investment. You're choosing real estate, and then because you've got a dollar in your account and you put a dollar into real estate, it'll earn you back $1.50, and then you collect all those extra 50 cents, and then you got your piggy bank, and then you go buy another thing. And so I'm constantly, I want my checking account to be always at zero, because I know all my money's working for me. And
right. And kind of, and just to interrupt it, what I've also kind of found with buying that first property is, I thought I buy one property a year. But there is just a momentum that builds, and the more properties that you have, the more, the easier it is to get loans, the easier financing, and I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't have decades of experience like you do. So correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a momentum that comes with real estate where the more you buy, the easier that next purchase is.
Yeah. That's I talk about the real estate investing flywheel, where it's very, very difficult to spin. It's very heavy. You hear about this in the startup world, and then it just starts moving faster, chugga, 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 and then it's just flying. And also, I tell people are always like, every real estate investor loves sharing their highlights, their home run stories, right? Oh, I got this for this price, and I flipped it for this, or I can't believe I get rents for this. Like, you hear all the highlights, and then new investors love to say, well, when you have a deal like that, bring it to me. And I was like, okay, well, first of all, those deals, the best home run deals, they found me because I was doing so many transactions, or I was making so many phone calls. I was telling so many people, this is the type of property I'm looking
Yeah.
for. Then those deals come find me, but they're never going to find the person who's thinking about real estate, the person who's reading about real estate. Like you should be doing that, but the gold, the true gold, the home run finds, they're going to come find you because it's like, hey, I've got a neighbor who's in a desperate situation and they need to move across country tomorrow. Can you buy their house at this price? So, or whatever it is. And you're like, okay, sure, I'll help out.
Yeah.
So
Well, that reminds me of, I think it was, one of the Bigger Pockets guys who said that, the deal of the lifetime comes by, once, or the deal of the year comes by maybe like once a month. The deal of a lifetime comes by maybe once a year.
yeah,
So there are deals that just pop up, and I've been lucky that they're on the MLS, and I hope at some point to be able to get to where you're at, right, and buying them off of where having them come to me,
yeah.
right.
Well, also when you're doing that scale and you're doing this so often and you're doing this for 15 years or 20 years or whatever it is, you recognize that good deal within 10 seconds. A newer person will will review the deal and just be suspicious about it. So my portfolio of 50 homes. I was on the Bigger Pockets. I was interviewed on Bigger Pockets, episode 466, and I said, "Hey, I have this huge portfolio of homes that I bought between $30,000 and $50,000. People don't think that exists. Each one was $30,000, $50,000, and I'm also ADHD. So whenever I see something shiny, I got to sell a property to go buy another one. And I tried, I probably had 100 people reach out to me, and I said, "Hey, here's some properties that are $55,000, $60,000 each. And they get about $650, $700 in rent, which is good. That's a good number.
It's 1% rule.
Yeah. Yeah. And I send this to probably 100 different people who listen to Bigger Pockets, have said they've never bought a deal before. And they reached out to me and I showed it to them. Not one of them bought it. And I listed on the market. I sold them for $95,000 each. And so it was just like, if you're new, you're not going to recognize that there's a good deal sitting there in front of you. Like, it just takes buying properties and getting in the game before you really understand, the gold. It just happens that way.
100%.
What's that?
No, I just said 100%. I completely agree.
So I'm flipping through your tweets here. So there was another thing that really sort of got me. You mentioned something that I actually just retweeted about the long-term strategy of you buy a house when you're 30 years old, and 30 years, you get a 30-year mortgage, 30 years it's going to be paid off, and you're 60. Do a cash out refi, get another 30 years, and then when you're 90, you've paid it off again. And so you've basically paid off what, 3 homes or 2 homes with just one down payment kind of thing. You said it better. I don't have it in front of me, but
well, it's I've been thinking a lot about you look at modern medicine, right, and how long people are going to live, and the way that I am viewing it is you have to kind of assume, and not have to, but I'd like to assume they'll live to be 100. So that's so much time just to think about, like, how much can I achieve between me at 27 all the way up till God forbid I die at 100, right? That's what is that? I'm bad at math. That's like what, 63 years?
Yep.
73
70 to 27. Yeah, 73. Yeah,
73. Man, this show.
I can't do it in my head.
Just goes to show that real estate investors can't do math. Funny enough, right? Outside of a spreadsheet. But like 73 years, that is 2 30-year mortgages, right? So you look at people who have bought, like, what was real estate trading 73 years ago, right? Like, if you could have bought a property then, and then what it rented for then compared to what it rented to now 73 years later, there's just so much that you can pack within those years. So if you can buy one house, a couple houses in your 20s or your early 30s, they'll be paid off before you go to retire. And so then you could either keep it when you retire, and not take out any more debt against it. And it's going to cash flow crazy because you've got no mortgage, you've got rent appreciation. And if you want to, you could sell it and put it into something you're a little bit more, comfortable with. If you want to, be in stocks or dividends. dividend investing. So I guess my whole point being is that there's just so much you can do with your time, and real estate is all about making money over the grand scheme of things and over time, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if
And
that
if you,
answers your questions, but that's just been
no.
something I've been thinking about
Yeah,
lately.
no, I love it. And I like to always see both sides of it. So one, it's a great way to create generational wealth because when your children or heirs inherit that property, it's not like, oh, here's a property Dan bought for $50,000. It's the adjusted basis goes up to the
Yeah.
current price. So if they inherited it and it's now $1 million, it's like as if they got that they starting at the new price, right? So they don't have to pay taxes all the way down to zero. The other side is I don't real estate investor, you only get depreciation for 27 and a half years. So to me, you should never hold a property more than 27 and a half years, just because you'll lose the tax breaks of the depreciation write-off. But most
There's
people
so
don't have,
much gray in real estate, isn't there?
yeah,
It's never black and white.
right,
And I,
right,
and I
right.
apologize. There's like my whole light every time it gets in the afternoon, just like, the light just hits my face
Oh
weirdly on
no,
my
yeah,
desk.
well, I
Sorry.
have rain behind me, distracting me, but so we're balancing now. We're the yin and the yang here.
Right, right.
Um, so I know you're very excited about this BRRRR. So is a long distance BRRRR. This is difficult because then you're adding a new rock star, right? You're adding a contractor to your deal. Can you walk me through what you're doing here? Do you
Sure.
mind sharing numbers and prices?
No, I'm an open book. So I've done a couple, on my properties. I've done a couple rehabs before. I mean, redone flooring, countertops, cabinetry. So nothing, paint obviously, but nothing, I've never like added a bedroom, let's say. So I guess kind of my portfolio and what I'm looking at now, I mentioned townhouses. And I found a really interesting niche within the market that I buy in, maybe the 2 or 3 zip codes that I buy in, where townhouses are super undervalued.
Yep.
So there are a bunch of like these developments where you've got like these houses that live like single families, right? You share a wall on either side, right? But you still have a basement, and you have a first floor, you have a second floor, you've got a front yard, and you've got a covered in backyard. So it really kind of feels like a single family, but because it's in a development with an HOA, the price that they trade at is significantly less than single family. So I've just been having a lot of luck buying these, and because they live like single families, they get the same price as single families. So this property that I bought, I'll be buying it for 52 grand. I'm gonna put in about 5 grand to add a bedroom in the basement, which is pretty common in these developments,
Yeah.
and that'll bring the rent to $1,100.
Wow.
So all in, paying for it all cash, it's going to do about an 11% ROI, and then it just kind of comes down to how much money I want to pull out. So
Right.
I don't know if I want to pull out all 57, thousand. I might leave half in. I haven't really kind of thought that far as how much I want to pull out.
Right.
But what I'm really excited about is I'm buying it in an off time. So I'm going to do all this work, and I'm going to look at refinancing and pulling out money when the comps are a lot higher in probably late spring, sometime in the summer, when more of these will hit the market. So the comp will be a little bit higher than 52 grand. So, and
What,
plus the
what, what, what,
bedroom.
what would be sort of the number you want to hit on the post renovation? What do you think it would appraise for?
Um, Probably 60 to 65.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
when we're putting, it all kind of comes down to the comp rate, which is one of the challenging parts of BRRRR, right? Because you're
Right.
you're at
Right.
the mercy of what the appraiser thinks.
So just
But
for
even so,
people,
being able to pull out money, that the ROI is going to go through the roof.
yeah, I mean, for people listening, so a cash out refi, which is one of the last steps of the BRRRR method, is you're buying this in cash, putting cash into renovating it. You have 52,000 all in. If it appraises for $65,000, you can get a mortgage now for 75% of that, maybe 80%. But if 75% of that would be roughly a $48,750 mortgage,
Tax
then
free.
you could pull out. So you put 52 in, you pull out 4875. You basically bought yourself a townhouse for $4,000. Oh, with renovation budgets, maybe about $5,000. That's probably still cash flowing $500 to $600 for you after everything's said and done. Are you concerned about HOAs and them not allowing rentals, or the HOA fee going up, or how do you approach the HOAs?
So this property came up, and it goes back to checking your market, and it came up, and I saw it within maybe 30 minutes of it being hitting Redfin, right, or hitting the MLS. And I own a unit maybe 5 doors down within the development, and I've had good relationships with the HOA, no issues with them. So it's like, yeah, this, we need to get in this, and we need to get in this stat. So I no issues with the HOA. They allow rentals.
What's
So yeah,
what's the fee? How much do you pay for the HOA?
HOA is 180 a month.
And they cover what?
So they don't cover water. No, excuse me. They do cover water. They cover the exterior. So water, and then pretty much everything on the outside of the unit.
So your maintenance budget, I would imagine, is going to be very low because you don't have to. The HOA is going to cover
Right.
anything on the exterior, and then two, you're renovating this as part of your purchase and putting money into fixing it up. So probably you're not going to have any major repairs because you'll address them right away, and so it should be fairly maintenance free for you in a while. For a while, I would imagine.
100%. And the other element of it too, you hit it, hit the nail on the head, is it's a development, right? So there are, the capex should be lower than if it was a single family, because you're going to have the HOA that is going to handle some of the, the roof, some of the siding, right? So there's some other stuff that should theoretically be off my plate to a certain degree that I can kind of save. Instead of putting 10% for capex, I budgeted 5% instead.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And it makes it even easier long distance investing as well. It's just one less thing to worry about because does that cover the roof as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, roofs are super expensive, and as well as a lot of exterior things. So, and this is within the community that you're already investing in it. So you're very well versed, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of. I don't know if you're familiar with like Michael Zuber's One Rental at a Time, but he's very into, you need to have your map, your buy box, right, mapped out to where you invest in. So I've got my neighborhood that I work with my property manager. Where do I want to be buying? Where is the the good tenant base, right? Where's an easy place for people to rent that will kind of hit the numbers I need to hit, and then I just check it day in and day out. And everything that comes up, I put into a spreadsheet, so I can go through and see, okay, well, what's a townhouse condo, what's it trading for? What's a single family, what's it trading for? What's the average days on the market for February, right? Like I did a whole tweet on it, yesterday. I think it was yesterday, right? Like how you need to know average days on the market per month, the average trading cost per property, what's it selling for compared to list. The more information that you have on the little niche part that you operate within your market, the better decisions you can make when you look to buy.
So where do you get this information?
I specifically go through Redfin.
Okay.
For better or for worse.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the thing. It's free. Like Redfin has it. Zillow has their own things. Your real estate agent should also be able to provide this data for you as well. And it to me, what I sort of love about the townhome communities or something where everything is probably has the same floor plan. They're all built at the exact same time, exact same square footage. You're comparing apples to apples, right? That, wow, if I do X, Y, Z, it'll be, I'll get that value for it across the street because it's the exact same house built at the exact same time with the same, setup. It gets a little bit trickier when you're looking at, 5 different single families and different zip codes built at different eras with different materials and different square footage and floor plans. It gets a little bit trickier. So,
100%. And even worst comes to worst, I get it appraises for exactly what I bought at 52K. That's still fine. Then the math still works, right? I can still pull out money. I can still have a real nice ROI if I want to, or I could just keep it, leave it, all cash, which I probably won't, but I could. Just gives me options.
Yeah, you just made me think of this. So people who might have $50,000 in their IRA, or they've got $50,000 sitting in their checking account. Imagine if you just took that $50,000 earning you nothing in your savings account, your checking account, maybe a very slow moving IRA account. You can make $1,100 a month with that 50,000. That's what you're doing. You're going to be making $1,100 a month, and that will cover probably your rent. That would someone's rent. That would cover someone's mortgage. That would cover 2 car payments, maybe 3 car payments. Like
Right.
this is amazing. Like what? And we already discussed it, but I'll ask you. It leads you right into it. So that $1,100 that is hitting your account every month, you're going to go. What are you going to do with it?
Well, yeah, I want to be careful. I don't want to get people too excited. My cash flow that I'm expecting is going to be 550.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my pro forma, and then I also have fake cash flow, right? If there's no vacancy, no repairs, right, just
Yeah.
fixed costs, it's going to be about 700. So that $700, let's say, or 550, whatever hits my bank account, it just goes right into the investment fund.
Yep.
So it just
And
goes
yeah.
it goes back into recycling, right?
Yeah, I love that. So yes, I got ahead of you. $1,100. I did not account for the HOA. Did not account for the insurance and the
Yeah,
property
property
management.
management. There's so much gray in real estate, right?
Yeah, right. So, yeah, okay. I made it a little bit too rosy, but I'm glad you mentioned that. So yeah, regardless, whatever, if you got 50,000 in your checking or savings account, it's not making you $500 a month. It's not making you $700 a month. It's not making it might be, maybe it's
Right.
making you 6 cents a month, right? Well, if you've got a decent interest rate and it's just sitting there doing
Yeah,
nothing.
if you're lucky.
Yeah, and with inflation, you're losing money. It is. So that if you're thinking like Dan, you're thinking like a real estate investor, you reinvest, have that dollar go work for you. If it's lazy money sitting in your checking account, and reallocate it real estate. And I love that you said that $500. It's not going into like, let's go to Vegas fund. It's another real estate fund, and then you're taking that $500 and you're reinvesting it, right? And that you're so young. Like this is just going to compound, and it's just going to take off. And if this is how you buy 3 properties in a year, right? It's this mentality. And
Right. I mean that 50 grand that that I worked real hard for, right? That might turn into 2 properties, on its own this year.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, if you do that cash out refi,
Right.
and pull out 48, you probably can go buy another one or close to buying a second one, and if that's in all cash, and you can pull that back out. I mean, that's the beauty of the BRRRR method. You're just recycling that money over and over again, and so yeah, this is it's fun, right? I see why it's a fashion, a passion, and it becomes addictive and exciting.
Yeah, and you look at that, and it makes it easier to not get Grubhub on the weekends. It's what makes you not like go and spend a whole bunch of money on Amazon. Knowing that this money is going to be used to do something like that just makes it easier for you to save.
Right. Lastly, I want to talk about another tweet. You said there's certain professions in our business where basically, if you show up, you're considered successful. Some of the things you said, like basically a contractor or a painter or plumber. If you do what you say you're going to do, you're going to be successful in this business. And I love looking at it that way. And I like to take that and run with it and say, you can apply that not just to our trade. Like if you say you're going to be a real estate investor, you say you want to create $1,000 in cash flow a month, you say you want 3 properties in 1 year, show up and do it, and you're going to be successful. Just like a lot of the tradesmen and the vendors in our business is like, half the people don't show up in time, half of or they don't do a good job, or they don't complete the job. Hold yourself accountable, and success awaits. Do you see it that way?
It 100%, and it's also about being a good business person, right? Making good, sound business decisions and doing what you say you will do, and being honest and doing hard, good work. That's how people talk about you, and that's how your business grows. So it's just a shame that that's not, that's a little bit of the exception than the rule.
Right. And so when I interview you in 1 year and you don't have 3 properties, you're going to.
Well, there's some external factors. I mean, I mean it, but there's a little bit of a conflict going on. So there might be some changes, but where I am pacing right now is, I want to end the year at 7 properties, in the portfolio.
Yeah. And what's the the over under? Like, are you looking at the cash on cash return or the ROI or the monthly cash flow? What's the like the one data? No deal is ever hinging on one data. But what sort of excites you the most? Where you're like, I definitely want to jump on that property.
Well, it would be cash on cash ROI. I
Yeah.
want to be above 10%. I've been very lucky. The properties I currently have are between 12 and 14%. With the exception of this, I said this property I'll be buying, it'll be at 11% when I buy it. But after I put, add some leverage to it, that should probably end up being closer to 20%, all depending on how much money I pull out.
Wow. Yeah.
But that's the number. Probably the number one. How hard is my money working for me on a monthly cash flow basis? I don't take into to account appreciation. I could care less.
Yep.
And then I guess the other element too is I want to make sure that cash flow is above 250 bucks a month.
I love
If
that one.
it's above 10% ROI and there's $300 in cash flow, right? I get excited.
And that's cash flow after budgeting for
Yep.
possible maintenance, after budgeting for vacancy, property manager, all that. You're still making $250, which means, yeah, you've got wiggle room. You got $250 wiggle room of every single month. So people say real estate investing is risky, but this strategy that you're doing, I don't see the risk. It's
Well,
amazing.
and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. That it's a forgiving asset class. I mean, it's easy to lose money on real estate if you're buying and selling, quickly. But if you're holding it for a long period of time, time's your favor, right? Time is in your favor with price appreciation and loan pay down, especially if you're not paying for that mortgage. It kind of seems like bad deals can turn into great deals. You just have to hold them for a long time.
Yeah, high risk, high reward is in the flipping, the short holds. You have high taxes associated with that. Yeah, buy and hold rental. I don't care if the price goes up. I don't care if the price goes down. My expenses are typically fixed, at least the biggest part of my expenses, which is the mortgage. Property taxes will inch up every year. Insurance will inch up every year. But so the rent also will inch up every year, no matter what's sort of happening in the economy, to kind of balance it out. So yeah, it get rich slow and little tiny apple tree, money tree giving me $100, $200 a month. That's going to bloom into 400, $500. And then 20 years, you got an orchard of 15 different properties giving you 20, to 200 to $500 a month. Like that's good living. And it doesn't feel like a job. When you have those short-term holds, when you have the flips and you're doing the renovations, you're giving yourself a job because it's speed. You got to work quickly. It's stressful. It's time is of the essence. But the buy and hold rentals, it's just water your plants and watch your money orchard bloom.
100%, and especially with being a remote investor. When I first got into it, like when I first started researching real estate, I thought it was going to be an 80-hour a week, right? Like, how some people talk about side hustles.
Yeah.
Getting home at 6 o'clock and then working until 1 a.m. And it's really not that. It's maybe 5-10 minutes. You're looking at Redfin, like I was saying, looking at your market, paying attention. And especially if you've got a property manager, right? Like take a couple of calls. It's not a lot of time. It honestly isn't.
Right. Yeah. And I think you mentioned in another interview something about a lot of times you're going to be successful. What makes or breaks your long distance success is that property manager. Because they are the manager of your business. As if you're if you own a McDonald's franchise, you're going to be as good as the manager running your McDonald's franchise. And so it's just holding them accountable, doing your due diligence up front. Any other advice you get to sort of sussing out a good property manager?
So I interviewed a bunch of property managers up in Milwaukee, and I think that from a long distance investor perspective, you should go into bigger pockets, right? And you should find all the people who operate in the market that you're trying to get into. And then you should ask all these investors, like, hey, who do you suggest for your property manager? Like who do you like working with? Who have you heard good things about? And then build a spreadsheet, right, of all the people that you're recommended with, and see who keeps on popping up. Like, are there 4 or 5 property managers that multiple people say, hey, this is a good property manager? And then take time, go out and fly out or drive out to the market and spend a lot of time with those property managers. I mean, maybe a couple hours, right? Meet them at their office, see how clean and organized their office is. Is it a mess? And that's how, the records are going to be. And it's going to be a mess managing them, right? Because you're going to be managing the manager. Ask if they do acquisitions, right? Do they have an agent on their team? Ask if they are overseeing any projects. If they are, see if you can't go and see that project, right? You're trying to suss out who is the good business people and who do you have a good rapport with. So that's kind of my suggestion. And like I said, a lot of these good business people, a lot of these good property managers, they will have agents. They might have their own license. They might have preferred contractors, and you really just want to get plugged into that rock star who can then bring you into the whole rock star society within that market.
I love it. I love it. So, Dan, how can people follow you and join your newsletter? Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'm super active on Twitter, Resilient REI, exactly how it's spelled here. I've got a newsletter. You can just put your information in. Got a link in my bio. Newsletters come out every Friday, 9 a.m. Central. And yeah, and if you're interested in being, Alan, yourself, and anybody out there who's interested in being profiled, just shoot me a DM on Twitter and see if it makes sense.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, thanks for joining the House of AC.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Good. Congrats on all your success. And I'm excited to follow your journey. Yeah.
Thank you. And hey, this is a lot of fun. Thank you again.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is the House of AC. Check us out at the House of AC, or go to Linktree, the House of AC, and go to Resilient REI to get excited about real estate. Turn it into your passion. It's fun. It's worth it, and it financially pays off. All right, guys. Talk to you tomorrow.